Hello, everyone. Hope you guys are doing well. We're finally on a live stream. It's been a while, actually, an extremely long time, I feel like, between deadlines. And there's going to be a huge deadline between Game Week 21 and 22 as well. But a lot of games of football will actually be played, which is nice, of course. I've sort of missed playing domestic league football as opposed to watching cup games, but I've been able to watch a bit of Real Madrid as well. We've been enjoying times lately. But in terms of football, of course, as I said, for the Premier League, super excited about Game Week 21. I was pretty upset as well that Trent was injured as well. Just wanted to sort of mention that it sort of ruined the two free transfers that I had this week. I think I would have had such a strong team if I was able to field out, for example, Trent, Gabriel, and Colwell, and then bench Pedro Porro. Then I could have actually, been a lot more flexible with, let's say, going to Foden, going to other players in the midfield position. But I feel like I've sort of been forced into this sort of avenue. For example, let's say if even Trent was ready and available to play, I think I could have even done something like Castro Estupinian and actually played something crazy like a five, I don't know, maybe a 5-2-3, 5-3-2, who knows? Probably still a 4-3-3 if we're being honest. But yeah, that's how things go. Hope you guys are doing well. In terms of my team, of course, I'm actually going to captain Palmer, and the explanation for that is really I think it's close between him, Saka, and even Alvarez, right? We're looking at Alvarez, who could play once again very, very good minutes, even if KDB seems to be fit. I've brought Foden into my team after the sort of double game 25 confirmation, because it just gives me a little bit of that confidence. And sometimes in FPL, when you're sort of, for example, stuck between different transfers, the way I see it is that I think Foden always has more upside than, let's say, Walker in the short term. So I think that to capitalize on Foden in the short term, I think he's a better transfer in than Walker. And so even though, of course, I want to get Triple City for double game 25, I think I can go for Walker a little bit later. As you can see, obviously, I still have Cash in my team. I still have Trent in my team. Those two players can be Walker easily. And ultimately, we have to see what happens with Haaland and his sort of fitness update, because I think his trajectory in terms of sort of recovering to full fitness has been really poor. So I think it makes sense to sort of still wait and see, have a two free transfers sort of open approach to Haaland. And if I need to transfer Salah out next week, I will. If I need to transfer out Trent out next week, I will. But it also makes sense to consider taking hits, because now with doubles confirmed, we can also know that taking hits is actually, a decent way to play the game when you have double game weeks, as I said. So that's my team as it stands. There's a lot of information to be gathered between Game Week 21 at the deadline and Game Week 22, right? We know exactly how, let's say, Egypt will be performing in AFCON. We know potential, for example, future double game weeks being confirmed. And also we get a little bit more probabilities in terms of the FA Cups and future blank game weeks in Game Week 29. So those are my thoughts right now. I'm going to try to answer as many questions as you guys have. And let's go get to it with FPL. So JP says, and let me just quickly get JP's question out. So JP's question is, how will Foden and KDB play together, you think, positionally? I think when you sort of look at the lineup, right, there's, for example, times when Bernardo plays, times when Kovacic plays. I think certain positions, right, in that structure can be attributed to Foden, right? Both of them, if I'm being honest. And ultimately, I think KDB can also just come off the bench, right? That's a reality nowadays, where I think KDB understands that his sort of role in the team is not necessarily starting every single game of football, but rather sort of being a supplement to the team and actually getting back to full fitness himself, and then eventually sort of assuming the spot in the team. If, let's say, Haaland is still out, for example, there's going to be situations and times where, for example, in the FA Cup match, you can see, for example, Alvarez being subbed off for KDB. But also we've seen in times past, for example, Bernardo can drop deeper into the midfield. Potentially a wing spot can be given to Foden, and or you never know. You could have, for example, Walker take a little bit of a wide right role, and then Foden could also play a little bit more of a midfield role alongside KDB, almost as double tens. And so that's an interesting structure for me that I think Man City could play, and we'll see what happens. So Cannon says, best captain, Palmer, Saka, Foden, Alvarez. I think, Newcastle away still feels like a pretty bad fixture. I know I've gone for Foden. I just think that in terms of, the ceiling, the peak, a lot of the midfielders just aren't great this week, right? I think Gross was actually another sort of favorite midfield pick that I had in my mind. But really, I think I'm sort of picking Foden, also hoping that he gets really good minutes for Burnley. And so here's an opportunity, in my opinion, to actually go for Foden, also thinking about, someone who can at least cover really good minutes in double game week 25. Because when we get to double game week 25, I still think, for example, KDB, even though he might be closer to full fitness, it's not necessarily guaranteed that he's going to play both of those fixtures. So And when we also think about, let's say, Liverpool having a double, I don't see myself, being able to afford KDB, Haaland, and Salah and Trent, for example. Like some of the team will have sacrifices. So I've gone for Foden. But as I said, going back to captaincy, it's the two options between my team in terms of Palmer and Saka. I sort of see it as still a bit of a 50-50. I still think Fulham are slightly worse defense than, let's say, Crystal Palace. I also think that ultimately Palmer's underlying stats are very, very good. And even though he's played a short time in the Premier League as a full-blown starter for Chelsea, I just think, he's looked incredible, and so has the Chelsea attack. Chelsea defense, obviously not so good, reluctantly playing it this week, but it is what it is, and I think Palmer is a good option for captaincy this week. I also think his minutes are guaranteed. Alvarez on penalties, most definitely. The last time we saw, for example, KDB and Alvarez, we actually saw Alvarez on penalties. Sanan says, hi, Fran, Richarlison or Gross? I still think Gross is safer. I think Richarlison is more of a short-term punt, so it really depends on your sort of mind. If you think Richarlison is a short-term punt that you can accommodate for example, you have, let's say, transfer plans to take Richarlison out of your team, I would take Richarlison out of your team and go Richarlison, but I think Gross is probably better in general in terms of stability. Catalina, hope you're doing well. Uproar, how are you doing? Ben C, how was my holiday? It was fantastic. I feel absolutely recharged and I feel a lot better. Why aren't you getting rid of Salah? Are you planning to get Haaland back? I'm not getting rid of Salah this week because, I just had a choice between Salah and Son. Right now, I've just made the decision to go out of Son. I still think, for example, I can go Trent to, for example, someone like Guehi and actually still go Haaland from Alvarez, or I can go, let's say, Watkins to Haaland as well. So it really depends. Like, we'll see whether we want to keep Salah or not. I think it just depends on, let's say, how Egypt performed in the AFCON in the sort of interim. And of course, we'll see as well, how Trent's recovering from his injury. But I very well could take Salah out next week is my point. Ali says, will Mubama start? I think he might, right? Because there's so many injuries. But keep in mind, of course, they have Danny Ings. And so I think Danny Ings will probably start. Can't really confirm on Mubama, but I think there's a pretty high chance. Should you play him or Taylor? I would probably play Taylor first, Mubama second bench. Do you need to take a -4 for Foden or Estupiñán? I probably wouldn't take the -4, but it's up to you. Alfred Chung, hope you're doing well. Hello. Ronick, hey. Yeah, as I said, for me, it's just an away fixture as well. Slightly worse game. I know Alvarez is probably going to play good minutes, but as I said, even if, let's say, KDB plays off the bench, we've seen, for example, KDB for Alvarez, quite often a substitution that we've seen, like just in general, historically with Pep, and so I think that could be a possibility. What about Watkins? Once again, an away fixture versus a pretty decent team in Everton, so not that interested. And generally speaking, of course, we have midfielders who benefit more from goals scored, right? So Saka and Palmer at home, good games, penalty takers. I like to take my gambles with those players. What if Trent recovers for Bournemouth? Why can't I start him? Good point, actually. Extremely good point. Good point. Didn't actually think about that. How can he recover, though? Because I think he's still estimating. I think he's still trying to make it for the Chelsea game. This can't go wrong, can it? I don't think they'll risk Trent at all. Either he plays or he doesn't, right? It's a good point. I actually need to think about that. I mean, is there a chance, for example, for Trent to potentially... I just don't think Trent's going to make it, which is why obviously he's at the back of my bench. But, I mean, you still make a good point. He should definitely be ahead of Cash. Yeah, I mean, let's just try. Put Trent there. I don't think it's going to change anything, but we'll see. Should I sell Bowen for Jota or someone else? I don't think Jota makes sense because I think he has a pretty high chance of having a blank game week as well. So that sort of probably puts your team in a slightly worse position. Because if you think about it, if we own Chelsea players, if we own, for example, Spurs players, those players will actually hit a sort of wall, if that makes sense. That they're going to hit a wall where, unfortunately, they're going to have a lot of blanks created for your team. And if you, let's say, have another Liverpool player on top of that, that's not exactly ideal. So I think the ability to sort of play around the blank game week 26, if it comes to fruition, is something that you need to think about. And probably putting more eggs in that basket this week, with the information that we have, is probably unnecessary. Is it worth keeping a hold of Trent? I think it does make sense, right? Keeping Trent is definitely a viable strategy. What I don't like about keeping Trent so much, and the only reason why I haven't taken him out this week is because I just thought Porro was a very competent player to play this week. I didn't necessarily want to bench him. And as I said, we have so much information that we can actually get between Game Week 21 deadline and Game Week 22 deadline that it does make sense for me to carry 2 free transfers as much as possible. And so between, let's say Estupiñán, who's probably the best replacement for Trent, in my opinion, for this week, versus, let's say, who I've brought in terms of Foden, I still think Foden has a better game as a midfielder, right? You know, with a decent attacking fixture in mind, compared to, let's say, Estupiñán with a very, very good fixture versus Wolves at home. Foden or Charleston both for a -4. Your top 700, what do you think about going Bruno? I think Bruno's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with Bruno. Congratulations on being top 700, but I'm also going to have to put you on timeout just because we don't want the chat to be spammed. Hani says, why Palmer over Saka? Logic or gut? It is a bit of logic, actually. If you look at the goal scoring odds, it's very close between Saka and Palmer. I think Palmer actually slightly edges him. But also, underlying stats this season have actually favored Palmer over Saka. And they're both penalty takers, so I'm not really concerned. BL says, hi, Fran. Got Bowen early, now he's injured. Get Foden for -4 Jota. I prefer Foden, as I said. Particularly since you have a double game week confirmed for Foden. But for Jota, of course, the issue is that he very well might not have that double game week, right? There's still a chance that that double game week doesn't come. And so it's not really worth it. Gross has 5 great games. Absolutely has 5 great games. I think Gross is beautiful as a transfer this week. But Foden also has maybe an extra game, which is confirmed. Eric says, hi, Fran, asking a little advice. Bench Porro or Dalot? I think I would bench... Honestly, I would bench Dalot personally. I still think Spurs is an incredible attacking team. I really struggle to see both teams actually keeping the clean sheet, and it actually comes down to who I think is a better attacking player, and I think it's Porro. Palmer will be the most captain this week, so how big risk would Tony? Tony would be a huge risk, but I think you have to understand that it's almost the concept of free risk, right? If you think Tony's a very good captaincy, and he has a really good high quality game, then captain him, because that should give you an edge, right? A differential of other people without losing the quality of an asset. For example, if I pick Odobert captain, that's a differential, but he's not reasonably a good pick, if we have to be honest. Like, there's not going to be good goal scoring odds for him. There's not going to be good assist odds for him. Whereas with Tony, of course, the odds are very, very good for him to be a good pick and a good captaincy this week. So yeah, I do like Tony a lot. Got Walker and Alvarez. Should I do Son to Foden? I don't think you necessarily need to do it, but it's a transfer that I like, and it's a transfer that I've done. So I hope that sort of lets you know what my mind is at. I do think, for example, if I was to triple up Man City right now, what would be my favorite triple up of Man City? I think it would be Haaland, in place of Alvarez, Foden right now, and Walker. So if that sort of changes your mind or helps you sort of make that decision or arrive at that conclusion, I hope that helps. Colwer Estupiñán, definitely Estupiñán. I don't think is close. Best option to replace Son under 6 million. In my opinion, I think it's I don't, you can't afford Eze though, right? That's the issue, because technically Eze is 6 million. So under 6 million, I think I have to say Garnacho, very, very clearly. Or even because for me, Garnacho still has a good home fixture, right? A good attacking fixture to sort of attack Spurs defense. Whereas Douglas Luiz still doesn't have a great fixture in my opinion. Bowen needed. Bowen news. I mean, I don't have any Bowen news, unfortunately. I think Bowen is probably scheduled to be out for at least 3 weeks to 1 month, but we never know. KDB better minutes than Foden. Yeah, but the issue, of course, is KDB is coming back from an injury. So if you've actually looked, for example, at KDB's minutes over the last few years, it's not brilliant. He is a player, obviously, who's absolutely crucial to this Man City team, but I think let's not make the mistake that he actually has, perfect minutes. Last season, he actually played 2,400 minutes. Foden also played pretty good minutes as well. Foden was injured for a pretty long sort of segment of that season. He played 1,500 minutes, but was actually injured for a pretty long run as well. So now that KDB's, for example, missed out on so many minutes, there's the issue where he has to sort of come back to full fitness. And so I think part of it too is Foden has sort of found his way back into the team, which is really, really nice. But if you look just in general, for example, last season with Foden, he did lose a lot of minutes due to injury. So that's a pretty big thing that sort of influences. Actually, Foden played 1,800 minutes, but he still had an injury. And so that sort of changes the minutes per game as well, aspect of these players. Yeah, I think Foden got injured between game weeks 27 and I think 33 potentially. Yeah, he was injured for a pretty long time. So that takes away from a lot of minutes, right? We're talking about around 7 fixtures, I suppose, that he missed, or around 6 here. And that sort of adds up to very similar to what is KDB's minutes last season. But KDB's also 1 year older. Foden is sort of a more important player to the team this season than he was last season too. So yeah, I think part of it is if we can move to KDB eventually, if we don't want to go Salah and give me 25, then I can actually just go Foden, KDB, Haaland, right? Because I'm not going to have Alvarez in my team, and maybe I won't have Walker. It depends on whether, let's say, I go into someone like Estupiñán the week after this, or think about other moves. Bench KDB, Bailey, Porro. I definitely wouldn't bench KDB. I'd just bench Porro in that situation. One free transfer remains. Shall I transfer either Bowen to Richarlison or Archer to Alvarez / Nunez / other striker? I think Darwin Nunez is interesting because you could be looking at a player who actually could be playing in double Gaming 25 and someone who actually could be the captain, sorry, not the captain, but actually the penalty taker for Liverpool over this sort of short little run here. But generally, I still prefer your first move and your first suggestion, which is Bowen to Richarlison. I think he's a good short-term punt, and actually the nice thing about Richarlison that I see is that Richarlison's minutes will get worse when Son comes back after the Asian Cup. So if you can actually go for Richarlison, what's nice is that around that time, of course, we know Hwang will be coming back. And so once Hwang comes back, that will help a lot. Will Garnacho start? I'm pretty confident he will. I don't have a leak, but I think he'll start. Saka to Foden. I would not go Saka to Foden. I think I would definitely keep Saka. Gross or Saka for the next 3. I'd probably still pick Saka. But if, for example, Gross allows you to be much more flexible with your team, then I would go Gross. Best midfielder outside of Saka, Palmer, Foden. I'd probably say Gross. If you can wait till next week, I'd probably go for Eze. Thinking of Bruno captain over Palmer. It's a good captaincy, but I'm not sure if I have that much confidence in Bruno just because his underlying stats this season have taken a little bit of a beating. And I think part of that too is because the United team has been a little bit more ineffectual. But of course, if you think, for example, let's say United are about to turn the corner around this point in the season because they have a lot of players coming back, then yeah, go for Bruno. What do you think about Botman? I mean, he's got no value really until Game Week 23. But he's going to be a good pick. And I think Newcastle, of course, will recuperate a little bit as a team. Foden or Jota, definitely I would pick Foden. Wolves, Crystal Palace, Wolves, Crystal, and Fulham. Would you put them in a weak to strong defense? I actually would probably captain João Pedro, honestly. But in terms of defense, I would actually put it in terms of Crystal Palace best defense. Then I think it's probably Wolves. Then I think it's Fulham. I think Fulham's probably the worst defense there. Pretty close though between Wolves and Fulham. Foden for Bowen or Salah? I'd probably go Foden for Salah because I mean Bowen will probably come back and be useful for you, a little bit earlier. But I'm also gonna have to put you in timeout. Sorry about that. Let's try not to spam the chat, guys. Everyone should have their time to sort of ask their questions. Is there any news on Taylor? So apparently we have no training information and no pictures on Taylor, and unfortunately Burnley's sort of social media staff or strategy manager has sort of determined that actually no sharing of information around injuries should be done by Burnley. So we're probably not going to get any information about Taylor at all. And I think that's unfortunate. I think one thing you also need to look at is that the Burnley fixture has been sort of fast forwarded. And so, of course, if he was carrying an injury recently, as soon as, let's say, 3-4 days ago, pretty unlikely, in my opinion, that Taylor would be fully fit. Would you consider playing the following team in a 5-2-3? Moreno, Konsa, I just don't like the Aston Villa defenders, if I'm honest. I would probably go for a -4, genuinely. I'm just looking at your team. I would say I would not be confident playing 2 Aston Villa players. Eze to Palmer, don't know why you haven't got the best English cam in your team. Well, I don't have someone who's playing versus Arsenal away, so I could probably go Eze next week, and I'm not sure about Eze being better than Palmer. Start Isaac or Trippier. Definitely Isaac. I think if, let's say, Newcastle should be getting something from this game, it should probably be from the offensive point of view. So I would go with Isaac. Vandy says, hi, Fran, please help me. Would you go Salah to anyone for a -4? I already went Son to Bowen and only Archer on bench. I probably would, yeah, because obviously Bowen is pretty unlikely to play. I mean, at the end of the day, though, you do have Archer on the bench, so I probably wouldn't make a move because the -4, there might not be enough people who are actually worth, making that transfer for. Chisel Plan saying only one center back. I mean, yeah, that's the case, but then also I'm not picking, for example, Porro. I mean, I'm not sure what that point means, right? Because the thing is, Man United this season have still operated like a truly horrible offense, regardless of the sort of quality of defense that they've played versus. Bruno is a great pick, but I don't know if he's better than, let's say, Palmer and better than Saka. And I take the point. I mean, I still think, for example, Spurs being Van de Ven up, compared to, let's say, last week is quite nice. Davies being out, of course, is not nice. But it's really nice that Van de Ven's come back because, of course, he's a sort of left-footed center back as well within that team. And Romero has played decently well, in Romero's absence. Zinchenko news. I don't have any news updates on Zinchenko. I don't think we're going to get it as well. So that's a bit unfortunate. Unfortunately, this is the way this deadline works, where this game week is basically 2 weeks long. And so we don't get enough news on Zinchenko. I think he's probably back, but I can't confirm that. Palmer captain is no good. Fulham have a good defense. I don't know what I need to say. I don't think Fulham is a good defense at all. I just think that's untrue. I mean, on like what metric is Fulham a good defense is probably my sort of initial retort. Like Fulham right now this season have absolutely not been a good defense in my opinion. I think they've conceded. They're top 5 in goals conceded, and they're also they're top 6 and they're top 7, sorry, in terms of expected goals conceded. So that puts them and situates them basically as 7th worst defense in the league, maybe 6th, around that sort of territory if you want to look by any sort of metric. So they're definitely a bad defense. I don't think that's even arguable. I'm still getting Estupiñán. I'm probably not going to go Estupiñán. I think I'm just going to go Foden this week. Son to Foden or Archer to João Pedro. I actually really like Archer to João Pedro a lot more. Full of conceded most chances through the middle. Which is fine. Cole Palmer plays in the middle. Who do you want to eventually swap Dubravka to? Maybe Ederson, potentially. We'll see, obviously. It really just depends on, let's say, how I get to, 3 Man City players and so on and so forth. Photo means I take a -4 next week to get Haaland, so I'm safer to bring in Gross and avoid the -4. I think so, Josh. I would agree with you there. So make that move. Would you buy Foden if you already have Bernardo Silva? Probably not, to be honest. I think in your situation, Bernardo Silva is good because he probably is going to guarantee more minutes. Is he, for example, as, let's say, offensively geared as like someone like Foden? Maybe not. But yeah, I wouldn't double up like so. Is Archer starting? Do you know? I can't confirm that. I'm sorry about that. I probably think he would, but I think a lot of people are suggesting that he could very well be benched. Estupiñán or Porro? Definitely Estupiñán. Cash to Walker or Estupiñán. I would still go Estupiñán on this week, and Walker maybe a subsequent week. Let's say Gameweek 22. Any reason why you aren't captaining a City player? Don't want to overcommit? No. I just think that Palmer has a better fixture. Hi, Fran. Bench one between Watkins, Alvarez, Solanke, and Richarlison. Why do you need to bench one of these players? I need to ask that question first. But if I really had to bench one, I would bench Watkins. I know that sounds crazy, but I would bench Watkins. Actually, no, I would bench Solanke. Sorry, I would bench Solanke, definitely. Is Solanke to Tony for a -4 crazy? I think it's crazy. I actually want to move into Solanke in a few weeks' time, so definitely I don't think it's worth it. Best defender to bring in outside of your team, Estupiñán. Is Watkins a good differential captain? I don't think so. It's an away fixture, so it's not something I particularly like. Benching headache, Gordon or Solanke? I'd probably go Solanke if I'm honest. Harry says, would you take a -8 to do Son to Richarlison / Foden and a Dingra to Gross and Tsimikas to Estupiñán, or only take a -4 and do the first 2 transfers and have Cash or Taylor in 11? I'd probably do the -4 and have Cash, have Taylor ahead of Cash, and that's it in the 11. And then obviously if Taylor doesn't play, you will get Cash. Darwin captaincy opportunity. I believe there's an angle for Darwin captaincy. I just think that I've got full guarantees with Palmer, full guarantees in terms of minutes with Palmer. Chiseled Planet, thank you so much for the donation of the gifted membership. Congratulations, Sean, for getting the membership as well. Really nice to see you around the live stream. I do hope that, of course, United turn that corner for you. But yeah, I do also hope the Bruno captaincy works out. I think it's a good captaincy. I think, is it, for me, as good as Palmer and as good as Saka? Maybe not. But I know Bruno can cook at any time as well. Harja, thank you very much for your donation as well. Hey, Fran, Saka or Foden, the better pick for now, and also the next few game weeks till Haaland and Salah get back. So for this week, actually, I would recommend Saka, right? Because first of all, I think he's probably got a better fixture than Foden, right? The reality is, of course, Crystal Palace at home versus Newcastle away. Yes, of course, Foden will have a double game week confirmed, but you could probably still bring in Foden, right? I think the reality is a couple of us are down, 1, 2, 3 midfielders. If you have space to, for example, go Saka, then Foden, I think that could work out really well. If you don't go for the next week, I think there's also an opportunity to simply go Eze. So I'd probably go with Saka. I just think there's more guarantees with minutes. I know a lot of people think that, Foden, there's a double-edged sword, right? He could lose minutes very quickly. But I also don't think he's like a completely rubbish player. Like, I can't see why he wouldn't be crucial to this team. Any Taylor news? I really don't have Taylor news. I'm sorry about that. Can't confirm that. Start Solanke or Bowen. I'd just start Bowen. I mean, if he doesn't play, he doesn't play. I can't see, for example, a situation where Bowen is coming back from an injury and suddenly has to be thrown out for 5 to 10 minutes. If he plays, he plays, and I think he starts. If he doesn't start, then it is what it is. Flames says, Fran, I've decided I'm going to remove Salah and Son, but should I pick Saka or Gross? I'm going to get Foden. The problem with Saka is he ruins my team in the future, and I'd have to sell Trent. I'd go Gross then, if that's the reality, right? If you think that Trent is someone you want to keep, then keep Trent. What's the most concurrent views I've ever had in the stream? I'm not sure, actually. Maybe something around 500. I think Focal has been super kind to me at times, and he's given me some sort of what do you call it when you sort of pass on viewers to each other, like a raid, right? So I'm not quite sure, but I think around 300, 400 is probably my concurrent peak, like on a serious note. Soccer Palmer captain. I mean, my answer is Palmer. Which is your transfer? Son to Foden is my transfer. Let's try to get a Focal raid today. My transfer this week, as I said, Son to Foden. When I saw Chiseled Planet in front of my and Mike's name, I thought it's a cool membership title given to us. That's funny, Annika. Actually, I'm gonna quickly check. Also, sorry, I might have missed some of the Facebook messages, but let me just quickly read up if I've missed anything. Thing is, on Messenger, I don't get the notifications the same way I usually would when I check some other platforms. So it's a shame. Let me just quickly check. I think it's all good, but I think if you're wildcarding this week, as I said, good luck to you, Anka. I really did like the wildcard draft, and actually really good news as well. As you said, KDB being non-negotiable could work out very well. Vladimir says, hello, my friend. Arnold, Sanchez, and Salah to Areola, Foden, Estupiñán for -4. Start Trippier instead of Estupiñán. Honestly, I don't mind Estupiñán -4. I don't mind it. I actually think this is a pretty bad Trippier fixture. I'm not expecting much from Trippier. I think Estupiñán actually has a really good game. It's not going to pay itself out perfectly this week, but I think Estupiñán generally, if you don't have, let's say, a third good defender this week, is in general a good transfer. Thoughts on Tony captain? I like it. If you're going to go towards Tony, I just think that the Tony transfer is a little bit ambitious. Like, it's a little bit where, when Solanke, for example, has a pretty good double game week, like if your double game week, right, as an attacker is facing Man City once, I'm not sure if it's a brilliant double game week. Whereas with Solanke, he has a pretty high chance of having a really good double game week. As far as, let's say, other players in the game as well, for example, Watkins, like, would I be transferring Watkins out to Tony? Not necessarily, because Tony, I think, is still quite well priced. Do I think there's a crazy angle where you can go Watkins to João Pedro because there's such a big sort of price difference there, and João Pedro could be a really good pick? Yes. So I think, for example, that's where I would say that makes sense as a transfer. I'd rather go João Pedro than Tony this week. Are you concerned about the highest point scorer curse? Palmer blank incoming. I don't believe in curses. I mean, they could happen, but they're not going to happen because of curses, right? I've seen, for example, Salah get insane points back to back. It can happen. Thoughts on Trippier? Generally, I think I wouldn't be thinking about Trippier at all until game week 23. If you own him, I'd keep him. No room for racism. What does that mean? Are you sort of looking at my team? Yep, that's my team. Sort of t-shirt on FPL. Do you think Darwin will start? I think he will start. I haven't heard anything about Sufal's injury. I'm hoping to play. Yeah, I mean, very similar to a lot of the injury situations that we have, right, in general in FPL, where you just play the player, hope for the best. If he doesn't play, he doesn't play, right? I'm just quickly checking if there's any sort of last minute like leaks and things like that that can actually really help me out in terms of determining things. Oh, and also I think we got a member, sorry, whilst I was actually looking at leaks. So Khalid, thank you so much, and welcome to being a president. Really, thank you so much for supporting the channel and in general all the members who are on the chat and supporting the live stream, supporting the videos in general. Um, you really help sort of make the YouTube experience awesome. And I hope, of course, if you need any sort of opportunities to, let's say, discuss your team, discuss transfers, discuss even FPL strategy or sort of my approach to the game, feel free and let me know. Usually I think the easiest platform to contact me on is Discord because I think it's easier to sort of prioritize members on Discord. But if you want to, chat to me on Twitter, for example, I am on Twitter as well. Thank you, Fran. Who is your favorite option between Foden and Richarlison? Would you captain João Pedro? Yes, I would captain João Pedro. I would definitely pick Foden over Richarlison. I just think Foden and Richarlison, you could argue, are both short-term puns. But the reality is Richarlison has a pretty high chance of getting a blank Gameweek 26. And Foden pretty much has a confirmed double Gameweek 25. So, from that sort of point of view, I think it would be pretty clearly Foden. Yeah. Those are sort of my thoughts. Start with Richarlison or Solanke? I would start with Richarlison. You moved early from Salah to Bowen. Now you got so many problems to solve. And I'm not trying to rain on anyone's parade, but I think my strategy is I don't always make transfers on the deadline, right? What I do is I usually just wait to make sure that if I'm going to transfer a player in for that week, I make sure that they play their final sort of competitive football game before I transfer them in. So, for example, if there's Champions League football, I wait for Champions League football to finish at the bare minimum. And the same thing with FA Cup, the same thing with EFL Cup as well. It's worked out so far, but obviously there can be crazy instances where, of course, people get training injuries, right? And it sort of happened, I suppose, with Trent, where, of course, we found out a little bit later because news can come out 2 to 3 days later, and clubs are basically, they don't need discretion when it comes to, let's say, announcing injuries ahead of time, right? You can have sort of a knock that you pick up and that sort of becomes undisclosed, like Trent. So who knows? Of course, waiting until the deadline is the best information possible. But also, I can understand why people want to chase transfer value at times. God Reflex says, Salah to Jota, Son to Richarlison, Bowen to Gross for -8. I don't really like the Jota move. I think Richarlison's okay. Bowen to Gross makes sense. But obviously, I guess you want to probably go out of Salah because I think Bowen will be coming back soonest. So I think I'd probably make it a -4. I mean, it really just depends on how many people are on your bench. And this is the same sort of advice that I would give to people taking hits. Like, how many hits do you need to take for you to field out a competent 11 or at least a competent 10 plus, let's say, one bench player who you don't really have any faith in whatsoever, right? Try to take it to that level. Don't go crazy in terms of bringing the absolute best picks for this week. That's just not how hits are going to sort of reward yourself, right? Hits probably pay off in the sense that you're bringing in a very, very good transfer for this week. You're trying to make your team as good as possible in terms of, let's say, your sort of 10 to 11 people, and that's pretty much it. Bashar, thank you so much for the donation yourself. Thank you also for continuing to support the stream. Captain Solanke with a weak Liverpool defense. I'm not sure if it's weak though, right? Honestly, for me, it's not a great fixture. I think Liverpool this season have still shown to be a very, very commendable side. Alisson is, of course, a very good shot stopper as well. Nothing's wrong with him. I probably wouldn't be captaining Solanke personally. Bench Areola Raya. I'd probably bench Areola. I like to back my home fixtures. I'd probably play Raya if I had the situation like you. But I can understand, obviously, if you've been frustrated recently with that Raya, then go for Areola. I think both have a really good game in hand. Do you think Watkins is a good captain? Personally, I don't think it is. I think it's an away fixture. He's also a forward, so sort of two things going against him that make it a little bit worse. And he's not on penalties, right? So usually I like to wait for the perfect sort of situations to align to Captain Watkins. That situation for me with Sheffield United at home didn't really work out per se. But yeah, I think I've got good options this week with the midfielders who are on penalties, who are going to play 90 minutes likely, or at least 88 minutes, 80 minutes plus, and yeah, have home games themselves as midfielders. Richarlison or Gross on a free. I think Gross is the more stable option, the more solid long-term option. Richarlison for me a bit more of a short-term punt. Nunez versus Richarlison for expected points. I mean, it really depends on the minutes that you believe that Nunez will play or Richarlison will play. I think in the short term, like Nunez could play a lot of minutes and he could be on penalties, so his expected points will probably be higher than Richarlison. But Richarlison, I think the issue, of course, is Maddison comes back soon. He could lose penalties to Maddison, and then obviously when Son comes back, he could lose minutes in general, and so that's quite tough. So I would still probably preference Nunez. But in terms of this week, I guess expected points would be probably better for Richarlison if we're being honest. Hi, Fran. Would you sell Bowen or Salah to Garnacho to fund Haaland and prepare for 25? I think that makes sense. Yeah, I think that makes sense. I'd probably sell Salah if I'm honest. Just because Bowen can come back quite soon. He could even play this game week. I think that's a little bit of a risk, but it's very possible. Cole Palmer. Oh, yeah. Cole Palmer is who we're captaining. For your advice, is Taylor and Mubama considered enough bench cover for Bowen? I think so. Those two players in combination. Start Gordon or Woke? Who's Woke? Am I crazy? Who's Woke? Why am I starting Trent? I mean, if he plays, he plays. If he doesn't play, he doesn't play. You know what? Maybe I don't want to run that risk. Maybe I don't want to run that risk. Let's just do that. I don't even know if... Yeah, let's just do that. I mean, I really don't think he's going to play. Like, I can't see it. That fixture is way too close. We are expecting him for the Chelsea game, so yeah. I just don't think it'll make a huge difference in terms of my team. Start Gordon or Solanke. I'd probably start Solanke. Should I bring Gross in this week, then Haaland for a -4 next week, or Garnacho this week? And I would go Garnacho. If it allows you to get Haaland for free, I would go Garnacho. Captain Douglas Luiz again this week. I'm not doing it, but if it worked out for you this week and you really think it's going to work out again, go for it. I'm not going to advocate for it, but it's not something that I'm looking towards, considering it's an away fixture. I'm probably not going to be looking at Discord today. There's just a lot of chat right now in terms of YouTube, and I can't really cover any of the chats in terms of time. Monks, thank you so much for the donation. Hope you're doing well. Opinions on João Pedro and Estupiñán in for Livramento and Archer for a -4. Have to start Taylor otherwise. Watkins out for Haaland next week. Also, would you rather captain Pedro, Palmer, Saka? All right, let's answer it bit by bit. So first of all, I think in your situation, because one of the questions I'd like to ask is Estupiñán playing for Livramento? Because I think if Taylor can just play for, let's say, actually, yeah, you're saying Taylor could play otherwise. I think Taylor's a bit of a risk, so I would actually go, yeah, I would go, I would play Estupiñán. I would make that transfer, and I would do those two. I would do that hit, right? Because I don't think Taylor is good enough if you're just sort of locked into 3 defenders this week and you actually sort of need to rely on someone who probably has a 50% chance of being injured. Would I rather captain Pedro, Palmer, Saka? If I was in your position, I think I would actually I'd probably captain Palmer still, but I think Pedro is, as I said earlier, I think he's the concept of free risk, where not many people, in the game will have João Pedro or the opportunity to move into João Pedro. And I think this is a really good time to move into João Pedro. So this is a great fixture. This is probably his best fixture as well from an attacking point of view. And I think he's close, at least close to Palmer and at least close to Saka. That's why, of course, I have Saka as my vice. I think all of these picks are very close. When you look at goal scoring odds, Pedro's actually a little bit ahead of Palmer, a little bit ahead of Saka. So I think on that basis, I'd probably pick Pedro. And probably take that free risk. I think those are 2 sets of good moves in the position that you're in with your team, and I like it. Start Lascelles, Porro, or Trent Alexander-Arnold. I'd start Porro easily. Anyone else playing Doughty? I think a lot of people are playing Doughty actually. Transfer in João Pedro or Darwin. I'd go João Pedro. Thank you, Fran. I didn't realize you didn't realize Haaland's injured still, meaning you'd have to start Cash and Taylor. I think you can just play Cash potentially, but play Taylor ahead of Cash, and then obviously if you have to call upon Cash, I think you'll be fine. Thanks, Monks. Start Gordon or Taylor. I would just go Gordon. I think there's more guarantees. You know, he's a midfielder. At the end of the day, Taylor's not even confirmed. Excuse me. Juco, hope you're doing well. What are your thoughts on a Jota captaincy? I've got no interest in a Jota captaincy personally. I just think we have better guarantees with people with home fixtures. I would take those guarantees. You know, this is an opportunity to take our guarantees. Any news on Zinchenko starting? We haven't got any news from Arteta, and I haven't seen anything about him sort of being in training and things like that. Do I have anything nice for the weekend planned? So, I mean, I've got a friend in town who, you know, is a really old friend of mine from high school. I haven't actually seen him for 8 years, and so probably going to hang out a bit with him. Also going to have dinner with the wife, and also we've got some events planned as well. Like I think a pottery class and a painting class, and so yeah, we'll look to have some fun this weekend. And I think we'll watch a couple movies as well in the cinema. So we'll see. Best Son replacements. Personally, I've always said Gross and Foden. And obviously, if there are sort of unique circumstances where you need a lot of budget saved, I think Garnacho makes sense. You know, I think that's fine. What country am I from? So I was actually born in Hong Kong, but I'm actually living in the UK right now. I'm living in London. Thoughts on KDB? I still think he's a bit risky in terms of minutes, right? Because he is sort of coming back from a long-term injury. And so I think it'll take some time to, for example, I think it'll take some time for him to build fitness. Trashford captain from Henry. You're an absolute Chad, Henry. Member for 22 months as well. Awesome. Thank you so much for supporting the channel, Henry. Henry is actually one of the absolute MVPs of the channel. Also a Discord admin. General good guy. Also Real Madrid fan. So, you know, that's where the vibes are at right now with the Super Cup. Greetings from Hong Kong. Nice to see you, Benison. Must be late in Hong Kong. Must be super late in Hong Kong. It's almost bedtime for you. Greetings. I was just in Hong Kong, just back in Hong Kong. I'm so boring, Mr. Feather says. All right. But yeah, I was in Hong Kong in December. That was fun. I'm settled, Mr. Feather. I'm settled. Greetings from Somalia. Nice to see you around. Nice to see you all around the world. I mean, where are you guys based right now around the world? How am I going? The cup is not going well, my friends. The cup is not. I don't even want to show you my cup performances. It's so bad. But fine, let's just show you my cup performances anyways. L. That's me every week at the cup, man. Let's not talk about the cup. Let's just focus on my points. FPL, you know, it's going okay. Let's try get top 10k. Forget about the cup. The cup doesn't exist. Mostly because I'm doing bad on it, you know. If I was doing good in the cup, maybe it does exist. But it's all about FPL for me. And draft, actually. Draft is better. People from Pakistan, Uganda. Very cool. Dublin, Ireland. Brazil, Hungary. Super crazy international representation. Thank you guys all for being around. I'm not boring. I appreciate that. Probably a couple gym sessions as well. Some boring stuff. Do I work outside of doing FPL? Yeah, of course. FPL is definitely not my full-time job. This is just my hobby, I would say. And something that I'm looking to maybe potentially move into being full-time if there's ever an opportunity to do so. But definitely FPL can't be a full-time job for me right now. You are the guy, my man. Thank you, Breno. Cash or Shar, who to start? I would still go Cash, actually. You know, I think I'd risk the Cash start in that situation because Shar just has such a bad game. I'm Spanish Chinese, or not. I mean, not Chinese, but like Hong Konger. Pottery class. Fran is a wild man. Tuning in from Pyongyang. All right, may I believe that. Yeah. You might be the one North Korean account. Jota or Foden, I would definitely go Foden. I just think there's a chance of a blank for Liverpool, which means that obviously if I know that Foden's double game week is guaranteed, I would just rather take Foden in the short term. Bowen to Kudush. What do you mean? Kudush not going to play. He's at AFCON, no? First time listener of your live. Thoughts on Lascelles to Cyprian and Son to Foden, even if I'm short on getting Haaland in one move next week. So I think taking a hit for Haaland next week is what a lot of the player base will do. So that's fine. Personally, I think because Lascelles is in a pretty precarious situation and he has a pretty bad fixture, I can completely understand going as Cyprian and Foden. I think that's totally fine. How will I take Haaland next game week? So I can go Trent to Guehi or Trent to Doughty, and I can go Trent to Doughty, and I can also go Alvarez to Haaland, or I can go Watkins to Haaland and Trent to Walker. Or I can go Salah to Eze and Alvarez to Holland, or some other moves like that. Would you start Branthwaite or Pau Torres? I do expect Pau to start. I would just start Pau Torres personally. It's super close, right? Because I think the clean sheet odds actually still seem to favor Aston Villa, as the last that I can recall. Good luck to you, Theodore, as well, in the position to roll, although a bit cautious. I think it's totally fine to be cautious this week, guys. If you feel like you can't field out a good sort of starting 11, other YouTubers are starting Trent Alexander-Arnold. Okay. I mean, I'll start it. I just don't think he's going to play. I mean, I can start him. It's fine. It's not even a good fixture for Porro, but, you know, I really couldn't care. But, you know, just on the off chance that some miraculous YouTuber has some crazy Trent Alexander insight and has an in with Trent, then fair enough. Let's go Trent. And let's start Trent. But I think I'm going to get Porro. Don't trust Eze, mate. So yeah, what I like about FPL is that if people, like, getting burned by players is a rite of passage in FPL. Like, I'm going to do it until I don't get burned if I believe in the player. If I don't believe in the player, fine. I'm going to stop getting burned. But if I do believe in Eze, maybe I'll do it. Maybe I'll do it. Buonanotte or Garnacho. I don't think Buonanotte is a guarantee at all. You know, a couple of the Brighton wingers are coming back. There's a lot of spaces and time for the injured players to come back. I'll just go Garnacho. 100%. Actually, Chiseled Planet, you know, you're a United fan. Like, what do you think about Garnacho's sort of expected minutes? Are you seeing him basically? Because I do think right now in terms of form, like, he is basically the default starting left winger or right winger. But the question, I suppose, is do you think he can sustain that starting position within the team and play 85 minutes every week? Like, is that a possibility or no? Harry says Foden and Eze or Richarlison and Gross. Foden and Eze for me by far. Who to start at the back? I have Purvis, Gabriel, Gusto, and Porro. I would go Gabriel, Gusto, and Purvis, and bench Porro. Start McCarthy or Charlie Taylor. I'd probably go Taylor. You know, worst case, you get McCarthy. Similar team as you, but you have Saliba instead of Trent Alexander-Arnold and 4.3 in the bank. You've got a better team than me. You could probably... Saliba's better than Porro this week, for sure. I would roll. Is Estupiñán a much better option than Doughty, or is it fine to go differential? I think it's fine to go with both. I just think Estupiñán has a better fixture this week. But the thing with Doughty, of course, is that he could have double game weeks. Do I have beef with any YouTubers? Not really. I think most of the YouTubers that I've actually met in real life are all really nice. So no beef with anyone. Has anybody been watching the TV show Beef? Just curious. What mid is worth a -4? I mean, no mid is worth a -4 unless you don't have a team that can field 11. Garnacho 100% starter going forward. But do you think he'll actually definitely play, like, let's say 85 to 90 minutes a game? I think he'll start. That's what I'm trying to say as well. I'm just kind of convinced that, you know, when Ten Hag, for example, let's say finds a bit of form from some of the other players, is it a possibility that we start to see Garnacho get subbed off at 70 minutes, 75 minutes, like that sort of thing? Jonas says, is it wise to get Archer out for João Pedro? I think so. Absolutely. I think going João Pedro this week is an absolute monster transfer. It's something that I'm super jealous that some people can do, and I think it's great. Beef is awesome. I thought you were the main character. What is that supposed to mean? I'm definitely not the main character of FPL YouTube, but if this season pans out well, who knows? No, I'm kidding. Taylor Colwell. Colwell, for sure. Captain Darwin. I think it's pretty risky. I quite like it. If you're confident that he's a penalty taker, I think go for it. I'm not necessarily thinking that Darwin has the greatest fixture because it's still an away fixture. And I think maybe Bournemouth have definitely stepped up a little bit since we last saw them. Or since we sort of formed a really poor picture in our head of them at the beginning of the season. So, yeah. Hey, Fran, have you looked much into the defensive data of Fulham compared to Palace? Yeah, I think Fulham are much worse than Palace. That's the reality. Who to sell in Gameweek 25 to get Salah from Trent Alexander-Arnold, Watkins, and Saka? It really just depends on what your team situation is. I think it really just depends on, for example, first of all, how Egypt develop, you know, in the AFCON, how Trent's injury sort of being managed. So we can't really answer that question right now. Any early news on team lists? Main character of Beef. Okay, I got you. Thanks for the help. Would you start Porro or Gordon? I'd start Porro probably. Why not Bruno? Actually, I'd probably still start Gordon. Why not Bruno? I just prefer Foden. That's all. Any update on Maguire? No updates really. And also, it's not even a good fixture for Maguire. So yeah. Doubtful 11 for me. What mid is worth a -4 for Salah? I'd probably go Foden in your situation. Hey, Fran, would you take a hit to bring in Foden for Bowen? Once again, really depends if you can actually field the starting 11. If you can't field the starting 11, I'd probably take that hit. If not, I wouldn't take the hit. Bernardo, thoughts? I think he's safe, but I also think, is the upside that high? I think he could be very consistent, but of course, yes, there are going to be times in history where Bernardo's going to have 1 goal, 1 assist, but how likely is that? Not that probable based on his underlying stats, and also sort of the propensity for him to sort of play deeper at times. Bench Porro or Gabriel? I'd bench Porro first. I think he's the worst player on my team, which is why he's, of course, first bench on me. Trent to Sipian for a -4. I don't think it's really worth it, but it really just depends on, like, if you think Trent is out for longer, like, whether you take the hit this week or not doesn't really matter, right? Because presumably you'd have someone to play over Estupiñán. But once again, it comes back to, if let's say you only have 2 defenders this week, you're probably going to need a 3rd defender, so take that hit for Estupiñán. But if you don't, then go for it. Who to bench out of Solanke, KDB, or Elanga, please? I think Ivan Toney is a really good option, Ashton. First of all, thank you so much for the super chat. Hope you're doing well. Only 10 minutes left till the deadline. I definitely think that Tony will start. And thank you, of course, for your first super chat as well. Nice to see you around the live stream. Yeah, I think Tony is good. I wouldn't necessarily captain him. I still think he's a little bit... Like, I think I might consider captaining him or João Pedro if I was in that sort of really luxurious position. I haven't thought about it that much yet. I still think he's on the level of Saka Palmer. I personally like to sort of captain midfielders most of the time because, of course, there's a pedigree there. But the reality, of course, is Tony has been playing sort of indoors, sort of background football. So I can't see why he wouldn't play 90 minutes. But, I think we just have some more guarantees from the midfield players. I also think Brentford are a little bit weak in terms of squad strength right now. I like Ivan Toney as a general transfer, though. But I still think, for example, players like João Pedro, I would still pick ahead of him if that gives you a little bit of food for thought. Rashford subbed before Garnacho against Aston Villa. Speaks volumes, Fran. And that's the position that I think, but I think that's what I'm trying to say in terms of, things are in flux with Erik ten Hag, right? I don't think he has, for example, like set dogmatic opinions on players. Like he gave Rashford an extremely long run before he sort of took Rashford out of the starting lineup at times. That Newcastle game obviously is sort of one of the big highlights, I think, of this season where Rashford sort of made a turn for the worse. But of course, Rashford sort of come back. And part of that is because also there's no one who's really been playing well on the right wing. But what I'm saying is, let's say if Garnacho has a bad game or two, like how quickly can that unfold? Compared to, let's say, Rashford, who's able to keep his position as a starting player for quite a while despite playing poorly. Foden or Charleston, I'd still go Foden. Colwill or Trippier, I'd still play Colwill over Trippier. Gross or Palmer captain, definitely Palmer for me. Is Konsa a good pick this game week? No, I don't think it's a good fixture for Aston Villa at all, which is why obviously I've got Cash at the back of my bench. Gross or Palmer captain. Do you think Palmer will outscore Richarlison? Yes, that's why he's captain for me. Estu or Bruno? I would go Estupiñán. Is Foden nailed on after KDB returns? I mean, KDB's already returned, so to speak, and we've seen, for example, KDB subbed on for Alvarez. I think he's not going to be nailed necessarily. Like, I don't think we're going to suddenly see Foden become an 85, 90-minute player, but the reality, of course, is Foden at 75 minutes a game is perfectly fine. I think there is more than enough opportunities for Foden to become that sort of player in the team right now. Start Virgil van Dijk or Porro. Definitely Virgil van Dijk for me. Both sort of poor away fixtures. I just think that Liverpool better defense ultimately. Porro captain. Are we being serious here? Foden, Richarlison, or Jota? I think Foden for sure. Start Alvarez or Garnacho. For me, it's Alvarez. Definitely Alvarez. We have Haaland out. He's on penalties again. He's probably going to start. Got kind of rested because he got subbed off at 56 minutes for Huddersfield. Take this opportunity to go Alvarez, in my opinion. Is Jota a bad transfer? In my opinion, he's not a bad transfer, but I think he's a bit of a luxury transfer because the way I would explain it is the same way I would explain that Richarlison's a luxury transfer as well. Richarlison's going to maybe lose penalties to Maddison Gameweek 22, maybe going to lose minutes to Son whenever Son comes back. With Jota, of course, as soon as Salah comes back, minutes will be lost. And also, there's a pretty high chance that he's got a blank game week, which would also sort of limit your opportunities to sort of create a competent squad around the blank game week. You think starting Colwill over Pedro is going to hurt you again? I don't think so, unless Alexander-Arnold hurts me somehow. Are you sure you're captaining Palmer? Yeah, I'm absolutely sure. Why wouldn't I be sure? What's your plan for getting Haaland? I mean, why are people so unconfident about Palmer captaincy? I'm just curious. Let's do a captaincy poll in chat. Just want to know where your thoughts are, everyone. Saka. Palmer. I think I've seen Alvarez as an option. I'm just going to say other as an option as well. I'll have to put, unfortunately, Bruno's going to be in the other category, which I think is totally fine. Chelsea are too inconsistent. And are you telling me that Arsenal are really consistent? Like, what's been consistent about Arsenal's attack this season? 5 minutes to go, lads. I mean, at the end of the day, make your own decisions. You know, like I'm very comfortable with going Palmer captaincy. If it goes wrong, it goes wrong. Estupiñán has more expected points than Palmer. I mean, expected points based on who's giving these expected points. If you actually believe that, go captain Estupiñán. But I'm not going to captain Estupiñán, and I'm not probably going to bring him in either. Saka / Palmer. What's your double Gameweek / blank Gameweek strategy when you're using your chips? So I think I'm going to probably, if I keep Salah this whole time, and that depends if I keep Salah, I will be going double Gameweek 25 captaincy if he has the double Gameweek. If it's just Haaland, obviously I'll just triple captain Haaland. If, let's say, the Liverpool blank gets confirmed and also the Chelsea blank gets confirmed, I think I might consider wildcard 26, or I might consider what, free hit 26 could do for me. But probably I think I'll just try to make sure that my team actually doesn't need a free hit at all in terms of 26, and maybe doesn't need a wild card until 31. Now, if I think my team is suddenly getting into a super, harebrained position and it sucks, I don't mind wild carding on 26, but right now I haven't really decided anything beyond that. In terms of bench boost, I think a lot of people are thinking game week 37 could be quite a big team, or a big opportunity to sort of bench boost then. So that could be an option. Also, I could look into bench boosting on 25 if, let's say, I'm not that confident triple captain 25. And Kunku for Tony captain. Fair enough, Dan. I think that's still a very strong move. We believe in you. If you believe in Palmer, I want to believe in you. Like, as I said, make your own decisions. I think they're very close. I wouldn't, for example, begrudge anyone for going Saka captain. I wouldn't begrudge anyone for Alvarez even, or Darwin. We have some really close picks this week, and there's nothing wrong with that. So I'm just quickly checking if there's any leaks, because obviously we've got 4 minutes left and there's nothing too crazy. Just gonna check again. All right, going back to chat. Anyways, Taylor or Konsa, whom to bench? I'd bench Konsa. Hope that Taylor plays. If he doesn't play, you'll just have Konsa playing. Bruno. Yeah, that's fine. Please, Fran, you need my help. Tai Long says, brought in as a -4 due to Bowen injury. Is he worth still starting Bowen over? I would still start Bowen first, right? Yeah, that's the situation. I don't think that's going to change anything for you at all. Is Estupiñán for Zinchenko a good transfer? I think he's a good transfer because we can't confirm that Zinchenko is going to play. So, and because Estupiñán has such a good fixture, I think it would make sense. So you're fine with starting Bowen over Eze and have him come on if he doesn't start, right? Do you think Bowen gets reduced minutes and it's better to start Eze instead? No, I think I think you also have to think about how managers treat things. Because sometimes, right, like if a player's coming back from injury, it's so unlikely that they come back and play 5-10 minutes unless like they were ready and fit to play the whole time. I just think these are sort of the circumstances with most managers. Like, yes, of course, if they were ready to play and they had a really bad injury, then and let's say they were multiple months out, then it makes sense that maybe they're eased in for 10-20 minutes. But I think Bowen's probably got a pretty small short-term injury. it shouldn't affect you too much. I'd still go Bowen. And it's also such a bad Eze fixture as well. We need to think about that too. Why am I playing Trent? Because it doesn't matter. Either he plays or he doesn't, and I get Pedro Porro on his worst fixture, or one of his worst fixtures, basically. Pens down, though. No, that's still 1 minute, or am I wrong? I'm going to refresh the page really quickly. We still have a little bit of time with each other, my friends. Why are you guys so keen to get rid of me so quickly? Transfers. Hey, Fran. Hope so. All's well. Thought I don't like Saka to Foden. Doesn't make any sense to me. I think Saka has a better fixture than Foden. So why would I ever tell you to go Saka to Foden? Show my money in the bank. Something ain't easy. No, I'm joking. Let's see. Oh, my money in the bank. Where's it gone? It's lost. I did captain Palmer, right? Good. Just wanted to be sure. All right, well, that is life. Pens down. Solanke for João Pedro. I don't like Solanke to João Pedro. I would keep Solanke. Who did I captain? Palmer. Is Gomez Liverpool a good transfer? No, not at all. I don't think he's got guaranteed minutes whatsoever. I mean, Robertson's pretty close to coming back. And honestly, Joe Gomez, what kind of attacking value does he have ever? Yeah. All right, guys. Pens down. That's awesome. I'm going to get ready for dinner since I'm a boring person, as I was called out on the live stream. I hope you guys have lovely weekends. I hope you guys also enjoy that Luton versus Burnley game. I'll probably skip out on that one if I'm being honest. Maybe I'll watch it on the Twitter stream on my phone. But I will be keenly watching Palmer captaincy. I hope you guys enjoy your soccer captaincies if you did so. Or if you went for a differential captain, more power to you. Hope you guys enjoy your points there. And otherwise, take care. Have a lovely weekend. And, don't get too upset if your captaincy flops. This is FPL. It happens. Good players flop. And yeah, otherwise, I hope you guys take care. Enjoy your green arrows. Let's hope for a world where Haaland actually does come back in Gaming 22, because I've been waiting for this big man to actually get me some real points in FPL. So we'll see what happens. Enjoy your weekends, as I said, though, and then take care and goodbye. I think my transfer value is, let me do the math, right? I had 1 million in the bank. What did I do this week? I did Son to Foden. I think I owned Son at 9.3 million. I bought Foden, who was at 7.9 million. So I probably have 3.4 million in the bank. If the math failed there, I am an accountant, but we get numbers wrong sometimes, and then we get blamed for slightly bad things that happen in the world. No, but on a serious note, I do think I have no, I think I have 2.4 million in the bank, right? Foden 7.9. Sorry, of course. Yeah, I definitely knew I got that wrong. But yeah, 2.4 is not too bad. 10.7 million in the bank, Anka. I think so. Obviously, you're planning for Haaland, which is totally fine. Yeah. Best boring person ever. Yeah, sir. Thank you, guys. Alrighty. Give me a kiss right now, Sarah. Sorry, I think kisses are reserved for my wife only. Apologies, Sarah. But I hope someone can kiss you somewhere else in the world. Take care, and I'll see you guys. And yeah, enjoy the football.